Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum dear students. Welcome to your English language class. Today we are going to learn about a very interesting grammar topic, that is relative clauses. I'm your teacher Sidra Batul and I will guide you step by step. So let's start the lesson together. What is a relative clause? Let's first understand what is a relative clause. A relative clause is a part of a sentence that gives us more information about a noun. It usually starts with a relative pronouns like who, which, that, where, or whose. For example, the boy who is wearing a blue cap is my brother. And this sentence, who is wearing a blue cap, is the relative clause because it tells us more about the noun boy. Types of relative clauses. There are two main types of relative clauses: defining relative clauses and non-defining relative. Dear students, defining relative clauses give important information. Without them, the sentence would be unclear. And non-defining relative clauses give extra information which is not necessary. These are usually separated by commas. So, in today's lesson, we are going to focus only on the first type, defining relative clause. What is a defining relative clause? Now, let's talk about defining relative clauses. A defining relative clause tells us exactly which person, place, or thing we are talking about. We do not use commas in these sentences. For example, the boy who sits next to me is my best friend. In this example, if we remove who sits next to me, the sentence becomes unclear. So we need the clause to understand the meaning clearly. That's why it is called a defining clause. Here are some common relative pronouns which are used while making sentences of defining relative clauses. Who for people, which for things or animals, that for people or things, whose to show possession, where for places, when for time. Let's look at some examples of defining relative clauses. The girl who is dancing is my sister. The clause who is dancing tells us which girl. I like the pizza that has cheese. The clause that has cheese tells us which pizza. This is the place where I play. The clause where I play tells us which place. So, dear students, in all these examples, the clause gives important information. Without it, we wouldn't know which girl, which pizza, or which place. Now, it's time to practice. Can you find the relative clause in these sentences? Can you find the relative clause in these sentences? First sentence: the teacher who teaches us is kind. The dog that barked ran away. In both sentences, the part that gives more information about the noun is the relative clause. Now try these exercises filling the correct relative pronoun. The boy Dash found my bag is my friend. I met a man Dash car is red. This is the park Dash we play cricket. So dear students, write your answers in the comment box. Let's quickly revise what we have learned today. A relative clause gives more information about a noun. A defining relative clause tells us exactly which person or thing we are talking about. We use who, that, which, where, and whose in relative clauses. In defining relative clauses, we do not use commas. So, dear students, you are now able to find and use defining relative clauses in your own sentences. Keep practicing at home and try to write your own sentences, your own examples. And don't forget to subscribe the channel and leave your answers in the comment box. See you in the next English lesson. Allah Hafiz.